You're listening to the Up and Under podcast, starting in 3, 2, 1.
Yo, what's up, guys? Welcome into the Up and Under podcast. I'm your host, Hani. Joining me, as always, it's Zeeshan.
Yo.
And once again, we're joined with Maytham. And as promised, and if you haven't checked out last week's episode, definitely do so. We basically did an entire breakdown on Adidas, Puma, and Converse, and the athletes on their brands, and really kind of discussed who was on the who they were, why they were signed by those brands, and kind of what they brought. You know, were they worth the signings? Were they not worth the signings? And as promised, we're here to bring you guys part 2, where we're going to be covering some more brands. These are brands that are a lot bigger. Some of them are bigger. Some of them are just globally recognized, and others are, growing, or even just internationally, just huge. And the 4 brands we're going to be going over in this episode are Nike, Jordan, Li-Ning, and Under Armour. So obviously, first and foremost, before we even get started, if you haven't already, subscribe to the show on all the various podcasting platforms. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher Radio, YouTube, basically wherever you can find a podcast, you can find us. So definitely subscribe so you don't miss content like this. Also, with the regular season coming up, you already know Zeeshan and I will be going through and doing our weekly topics about the season. So definitely stay tuned for that.
And it's going to be a fun season.
It is definitely going to be a fun season. But speaking of, reverting back to shoe brands, we got to talk about the biggest shoe brand, in the NBA, in the world of basketball, and potentially one of the biggest brands in the world today.
I think it's the biggest shoe brand in the world.
It's probably. It's one of the biggest. It's in the top 2, 3. Let's be real. And we're talking about Nike. Now, Nike basketball obviously began in about 1964. We all remember the Oregons. Those were sort of some of the first shoes. But Nike really kind of gained their popularity in 1982, with the release of the Air Force Ones, and obviously with the popularity of Michael Jordan. We all know the story of how that went and how well that went. We'll actually get into it later on in the episode. But they're basically a huge brand. They're one of the biggest brands. Most of the NBA players right now signed with Nike, and rightfully so. They have some of the best technology, the best brand recognition. The swoosh life. They have a whole sort of culture and mantra, not just in basketball, but in pretty much all sports. They have their imprint in there.
Yeah, man. When you talk about the Just Do It brand, right? What's the first thing you think of when you think about shoes, right? It's usually Nike, right? That just shows you the market value that they have, the consumer, value that they have in the market. So, yeah, when we talk about shoes, the first brand we definitely got to talk about in our part 2 edition is definitely Nike.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously right now in the basketball world, the biggest and the face of Nike currently is LeBron James. LeBron James, obviously, we all recognize him as the best player in the world today, going into year 19. But LeBron has been with Nike basically since the beginning of his career. I know he turned down a Reebok deal that he had near the beginning of his career and just signed with Nike. And since then, it's just been the best partnership for both sides. LeBron has been the best spokesman for Nike, and Nike has enjoyed having LeBron being the face of their brand. They signed him to $1 billion lifetime contract. And he signed even his deal before he even got drafted, which is crazy to say. And now he's at 18 signature shoes. He also has a Zoom Soldier line.
Yes, he does.
And LeBron his shoes are just iconic at this point. And there's not much I can say. I mean, he is the face of Nike basketball.
Well, when you talk about Nike after Michael Jordan, what is Nike after Michael Jordan? It all starts with LeBron James. Like you mentioned, he doesn't have $1 billion lifetime contract with Nike for no reason. They don't have a whole facility named after him and his own facility at the Nike headquarters for no reason, right? He signed an $80 million contract with them. Like you said, he turned down Reebok to sign that $80 million contract with them before he even got drafted, right? So Nike had that value, had that faith in him since day one, and he's paid that back time and time again, with more and more the success that he's had on the court. And then as well, we can't forget about all the off-court success that he's had and the persona that he has off the court. When you're talking about a guy who headlines his own movie, obviously Space Jam 2 was a flop. We all know that, right? But in having who else can really say besides Michael Jordan in the world of basketball that they have their own movie. And that just shows you the persona of the brand that is LeBron James. And when you talk about his signature line, 18 shoes already.
19's probably coming up.
19 is
I
going
wouldn't
to
be
come out,
surprised.
right? It's going to come out very soon. Plus, he's also got a Zoom Soldier line.
Yeah.
There's nothing to say. Face of the brand, checks over stripes.
Yeah, exactly, right? So yeah,
Nothing to
like
say.
even when we talk about LeBron James, like his signature line, right? You know, even with, I would say, the sort of brand image decline of his regular line, you know, because obviously there was that period of time, I think I would say like 12 to 15 ish, where it was kind of, people weren't buying it that much.
On and off situation.
Yeah, it was because it looked like Transformers.
The
basically.
design was
It was weird.
questionable.
And even LeBron, for, you know, some of those shoes, he didn't even want to wear it either. And that's where the Zoom Soldier line comes in. And he's, I think, arguably had more success in, you know, the recent years with those lines than even maybe his own shoes.
Well, he has two different price tiers of shoes. Like, if you're that big, that you have the Zoom Soldier line, which is more the affordable, budget friendly sort of line. Then you have obviously the LeBron line, which is the top end line, you know, the line that costs the most amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
But I think another underrated fact about LeBron shoes are just the amount of colorways and like the creativeness of LeBron and how he designed his shoes. Like, his shoes look really good, especially some of the PE editions that he debuts, and like those some of those colorways just look really, really good on
Well,
the
again,
shoes.
when Nike knows that whatever you sell is gonna sell out, then they can do whatever they want. You can really see the creativity channeled in that aspect when you have the freedom, when you don't have any monetary restrictions in that
Exactly,
sense, right?
yeah.
So you can do whatever you want. That's
He has-
reflected in the LeBron shoes.
That's what Nike is. You have the freedom to do whatever you want. You have that Black Lives Matter, equality. You have the I want to put this color on it. I want to put that color on it. You have that.
Because
And we're
they're
gonna
huge.
talk about that with the player after this next player.
Yeah.
We're gonna talk about that with the third player.
Yeah, because again, Nike is just huge. They have
Exactly.
so much budget and leeway to allow this to happen, and you know, there's nothing more to say. LeBron is the face of the brand at this point in time, which brings us into the next player on Nike's one of Nike's biggest players on the roster right now, and we got to talk about Kevin Durant. Now, Durant has been with Nike, I believe, since he got drafted. Yeah,
He signed a $60 million deal before he was drafted.
Yeah, he signed a $60 million deal before he was even drafted. Now he's one of Nike's best sellers, and obviously, again, being arguably the top 3 best player in the world right now definitely helps. But also the fact that his shoes were actually pretty darn good. I mean, he has 7 signature shoes right now currently in his lineup.
14.
Oh, he has 14. Yeah,
14.
my mistake. 14 signature shoes in his lineup, and you know, KD's shoes have always evolved. They've always been sort of the low cut, sort of, and it's different. They're very guard oriented shoes when he isn't actually a guard, which is kind of a testament to his play style and who he is. And we all know Kevin Durant being a different type of player, like a baller type of personality, and I think his persona kind of resonates in his shoe brand and what he brings to Nike.
Well, when we talk about the KD line, you know, so again, he has the most shoes after LeBron James when it comes to Nike. I think probably in the league right now, he has the second most shoes, right? After LeBron. He has 14 signature shoes, and you're talking about it, right? The low cuts. I think as we've seen in this new era of the NBA where there's positionless basketball and guys like Giannis Antetokounmpo, Pascal Siakam, all these 6'10", 6'11" guys like Kevin Durant who move like guards and don't really play like the traditional big man, that's resonated in a lot of the newer players. For example, like I mentioned, you know, guys like Giannis who are wearing KD shoes. Pascal still wears KD shoes.
Yeah.
And that's because of the fact that those are just tailor-made, I think, for the new era of basketball, you know, of those positionless guys that are able to do everything on the court, similar to, like you said, about Kevin Durant.
Yeah, Kevin Durant, he has that tastefulness of different colorways and putting, especially his and pearls.
Yeah.
The different lines he has from 1 to now, which I have up here as well. So they're really good with colors.
Like
I love it.
His colorways are really cool.
Yeah, they're
Just looking at someone like he had a one that he wore in 20 last season, the Dream colorway. He had Venom yellow.
Yep.
Like, Kevin Durant has some really nice shoes, and again, he's not the vocal presence that LeBron is for Nike, but I think he really resonates to true hoopers in the sense that
Exactly.
the type of player he is on the court really will resonate.
Not to mention, you could probably wear KD shoes more casually than you can with LeBron, right?
Yeah,
and that's
LeBron's with tanks.
that exactly. LeBron's aren't tailor made. Though again, LeBron's shoes have entered the culture in terms of everyday wear, but in terms of just a regular kind of shoe that just low cuts anybody wears, I think KD is probably more resonating with that fact.
And just to add to KD's thing, he's also contributing. I mean, he's also commemorating his late Aunt Pearl through those shoes. And the KD of the 11s, they did breast cancer for them as well, which is exactly. really deep and stuff into his shoes.
Yeah. Now, speaking of creativity, arguably the most creative guy on Nike's roster right now, and you can say this for positive and negative reasons, but we can't talk about Nike shoes without talking about Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving. He currently has, I believe, seven signature shoes right now, and he was basically the first player since Kevin Durant to get a signature shoe with Nike. And obviously, Kyrie Irving came into the league with a lot of hype, with a lot of expectation, and he really delivered. I mean, it was a bit of a struggle, obviously, in the beginning of his career, but then he got with LeBron, and then his career kind of just took off. The championship. So on the court, we all know who Kyrie Irving is. He had the whole Uncle Drew movie. Kyrie Irving is a personality in and of itself, but I think where his value comes to Nike is the creativity. Yep. The colorways look amazing. The shoes perform very well. Like, I have Kyrie's, so do you.
I have Kyrie's.
He has Kyrie's.
We all have Kyrie's.
We all do.
And all our shoes look completely different. Although we have similar shoes, like my colorway is different than yours. Like, they're just different iterations. Like, we went to go out and get the cereal edition, and he grabbed another pair. So it's the amount of colorways in Kyrie's are just endless, but also the fact that his shoes are worn not only by guards, they're worn by big men. They're worn by basically every type of player right now in the game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so exactly, like you mentioned too, like when we talk about creativity, I think the peak of that has to be Kyrie Irving, right? 100%. You talk about every single shoe that he has, he releases a number of different colorways within each shoe. I think and those are on the shelf more than you see like a LeBron James or a Kevin Durant. I think any other shoe you can compare it to, Kyrie Irving's, different editions of each shoe are on the shelf more. Not to mention the price point. One of the reasons why I have Kyrie's, not to mention, again, like you said, good performance, but the price point of it, right? I don't really want to pay for LeBron's. I'm not at that stage in my career yet, right? Like, I really don't want to pay for that. Same thing with KD's. KD's are still on the expensive side. Mm-hmm. Kyrie's are, they're still that good quality shoe. They're a tier lower in terms of price.
Exactly.
Than,
but they
Kevin
still
Durant
give you the tech specs that you want in the high-end shoes. Like, they'll still get the zoom. You'll still get the mesh, the fly wire, whatever Nike's trying to, like some of Nike's latest tech. They all go into the Kyrie's, but again, get it at that affordable price range. So you get your shoes in more people's hands, and there's a colorway for everybody, And
exactly. And when we talk about Kyrie's too as well, in terms of performance, I think that's one of the reasons why I got Kyrie's is because as a guard, I don't like wearing low cut shoes because my ankles are pretty weak. I have pretty weak ankles, So, like, Kyrie's shoes are very perfect for me because they're mids, right? And they still, they work for guards, and you can even wear them as big men. So I think the Kyrie shoes are very good performance-wise, creativity-wise, they're great.
His mindset when it comes to making shoes is different. I don't know, man. You got SpongeBob, you got Plankton, you got Squidward, you got it's endless when it comes to his mindset.
Even when we're talking about Kyrie Irving as a person, all the discussion, we'll talk about him a bit afterwards as well, but all the discussion surrounding him on a yearly basis, that serves Nike well in the sense that they have that unorthodox athlete, right? They have that market where that athlete covers, those people that don't want to be, the quote unquote regular path people, those people that want to do something on their own. Kyrie embodies that market for Nike, comparatively to a LeBron James or a Kevin Durant. So he kind of fits that aspect for them, I think, which is a very well thought out strategy for Nike.
He's definitely different. Definitely that unique wild card personality for Nike, which brings us into, I think, a player, at least for me, that I never expected him to be able to sell shoes like this. especially early on in his career. But now we can kind of see why he can sell shoes, and it's Paul George.
Boo. Sorry.
I'm sorry, it's way off.
Sorry.
P. No, on this show, it's way off P and the crew. Pandemic P. I'm gonna hit the backboard P. You know, you can just keep going and going. But Paul George, he signed with Nike in 2016. He's at 6 signature shoes at this point in his career. And honestly speaking, his shoes have sold pretty well. Honest, when you look at it, you know, and it's 6 signature shoes because he has the PG 2.5s in there as well. The current shoe is the PG 5s, and his shoes have this sort of, I guess, this good middle ground of they perform very well, but at the same time, again, they have some of that look, that colorway. It's one of the most popular Nike ID'd shoes out there right now, just because, again, you can do a lot with these shoes. And you know, he had some collabs with Gatorade, he's had some collabs with 2K, PlayStation. Like, so he's been big with that. NASA, like I'm seeing PE edition for. So again, I didn't expect this side of Paul George. Like, we all knew he was a good player, but I didn't think personality wise he'd be able to sell like this. But his shoes do pretty well.
I mean, I don't even know about personality wise. I think it was just the shoes, basically, right? The shoes, they've kind of dropped off in quality, and the sales have reflected that as time has gone on. But especially for the 1s and 2s, they sold very, very well when they hit the market, and for good reason. They were very good performing shoes. They were very simplistic.
Yeah.
But they didn't go, they didn't go overboard, but it didn't look too simple either. It looked at a very unique, sleek design, and I think it just worked well for, even if you're wearing a regular outfit, could go with anything, could wear it on the court. It was just a regular, good performing shoe, which is why I think a lot of people want to buy it, especially, again, when we talk about the price point versus the LeBron James or the KD shoes.
You're absolutely right. Looking at it right now, it's actually not even probably. It is the best shoe of his line. Yeah. PG ones, no doubt.
And like, they look like running shoes.
Yeah, they kind of do.
And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it actually helps with colorways. The simpler the shoe is, the more you can do with it, the different type. And plus, again, I don't know if it's strictly for a PG thing, but the line thing, but the shoes are very highly customizable. You can customize kind of every element of that shoe. So Paul George is definitely one of Nike's biggest athletes right now. And finally, the last Nike athlete that we have to bring up, 2-time MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, now an NBA champion.
Their newest athlete.
Their newest athlete, actually, and it's Giannis Antetokounmpo. Giannis signed with Nike in 2019. He's currently at his 2nd signature shoe. The 3rd is probably going to be on the way.
3rd is already out.
3rd is already out. There we go. And again, Giannis, he's one of those players that, again, embodies hard work. I think similar to Kevin Durant, he's not that vocal guy for Nike, but on the court, what you can see, and I think his story, I think he's Nike's biggest story guy that he had, besides LeBron with the whole kid from Akron sort of thing. But Giannis has that story, and the Zoom Freak lines. Again, I don't think they're the top sellers, but they're definitely good performing shoes at the same time, and they're very, very customizable.
Again, the Giannis shoes as a whole, I don't think they're, Nike's priority, but in terms of Giannis, how good of a player he is, plus, like you mentioned, his story, right? Everyone is drawn to his story. Everyone likes him because of his story. I think even if Nike doesn't know how to use his brand properly or can't really create much from him, he was still a necessity for them to go out and sign him.
Oh, no doubt. They have to sign the guy, especially now from how accomplished he is. Imagine Giannis signed with Adidas.
Yeah.
He would have been the face of the brand.
And again, 100%. The thing you have to remember with Giannis' signing is that his signing took place when Nike was losing a lot of the market share of athletes to brands like Adidas. We're going to talk about Li-Ning, Jordan, even though Jordan is, under Nike, but they're still technically their own kind of brand. So Nike was, at the time of Giannis' signing, losing a lot of that market share, and the sales and the numbers were reflective of it. And so they had to go out there and do something big. And, that splash was Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Yeah, his colorways are really nice on all shoes, but I think his best one has to be number 1. But come on, you have like the highlight, you have different colors. You even did what's the Eddie Murphy movie he did with? Coming to America. Sorry.
Oh, right. Yeah.
He did that as well, which is really nice, but number 1's his best shoe. Number 2 and 3, looking at it right now.
Well, he also did the different the Nike swoosh kind of the bottom swoosh. I don't know. I wasn't
the reverse shoes from Travis Scott.
Yeah,
basically.
Pretty
That's
much.
what he did. Yeah.
So those were our Nike athletes, which brings us into we've teased it obviously because we had to bring them up, but we're bringing it into Jordan Brand.
Jumpman.
Pretty much. Jordan Brand obviously came out in 1984 with the success and popularity of Michael Jordan. And honestly speaking, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Michael Jordan is the first player to have his own sub-brand in basketball. I think he was. Because no other athlete has been able to do this. Besides, Kobe has gotten close, which again, Kobe is an honorable mention, although again, his relationship with Nike.
Well, again, LeBron, we're going to talk about another player who's done the same thing later on. But I think LeBron is also, he's about to be there. He, as we remember last season, he mentioned that he wanted Luka as his first athlete. And he said that Nike kind of, in subtle terms, he kind of said Nike botched it. So
basically Jordan has evolved in being Nike's best athlete to now being one of Nike's biggest competitors. He is his own entity. The Jordan Brand is now, it's not only an iconic logo at this point, the Jumpman logo, as Maytham was alluding to, but it's a brand that has now crossed paths in the sports. Like now, what started off as a strictly basketball brand, you see it now in the NFL, you see it in the MLB, you see it in sometimes even a little bit in the NHL as well. So it's just crossing over into different sports, man.
More than sports, I think it's
lifestyle,
right? Jordan, I think when you look at most people who buy Jordans now, it's not really for basketball. It's for lifestyle. And you talk about sneakerheads, the whole sneaker culture.
I totally agree
right?
with that.
Jordan is a major part of the sneaker culture, not performance-wise, basketball-wise, but lifestyle-wise, and just the whole sneaker culture. So I think that's been probably the most impressive thing to transition from that basketball or sports brand to more than a sports brand and just a lifestyle brand.
Yeah, pretty much.
Most definitely.
Which starts us off, obviously, going into some of the athletes that are on Jordan Brand right now. The longest tenured Jordan Brand athlete that they have is right now is Chris Paul. Oh, come on, man. He made it to
I don't care.
It's CP3. But Chris Paul's obviously been with Jordan Brand for a good while. When did he sign with? I think he was signed since the beginning of his career. But again, CP3, he was able to get his own signature shoe line, has 12 signature shoes with Jordan Brand. And obviously, again, Chris Paul's popularity has fluctuated over time, but there was no denying. There was a point in time where Chris Paul was the best point guard in basketball. Like, everybody wanted Chris Paul on their team, and rightfully so. Even today, he makes a lot of teams better, from what he is. You can love him or hate him, obviously, with his play style. But there's no denying on the court, Chris Paul is just, he's a vocal leader, vocal presence. And I think Jordan Brand having him as an athlete was big for them, especially at the time when they got him, when they were establishing themselves.
Yeah, man, like Chris Paul already has like 12 shoes. Obviously, it's not really that popular anymore.
Yeah.
But I remember the days when it was pretty popular. Again, that's kind of reflective of his career, right? He's older in the league now. He's not that top point guard that he is.
Well, he's
anymore,
not.
Right?
He was an older style point guard, like a traditional. Like he's a point guard that we all grew up watching. But the younger kids today, they don't like that style.
Yeah. So Chris Paul, again, he serves what he serves for Jordan. He's that elder statesman of the Jordan basketball brand, I think.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. So then we talk about the next player. I think kind of the opposite of Chris Paul when we talk about like personality wise or just that brand image. We're talking about Russell Westbrook. Now, Russell Westbrook signed with Nike with Jordan in
2018.
He got his first shoe in 2018, actually.
Yeah.
So, and he currently has 4 shoes right now with, of course, his Why Not Zero line. Similar to, I think, Kyrie Irving in terms of the creativity aspect of it.
Yeah, that is true.
Russell Westbrook serves as that, I think, ingenuity, that creative guy for the Jordan brand and headlining them in terms of that. Now, obviously, shoes aren't as creative as Kyrie's, but they're pretty much up there in terms of, their the styles, the artwork that goes into them, the designs, So I think when we talk about Kyrie Irving's value to the Nike brand, I think a lot of the same things can be said about Russell Westbrook.
Which also ties in, Russell Westbrook also helps tie in the whole lifestyle aspect of the Jordan brand in terms of, how he's able to bring his personality to life with not only his clothing but also his shoes. Like his shoes will have since they released the why not. First of all, the name itself, the why not.
Why not?
Why not? That's
Right, that's his whole brand.
That's his whole brand. And again, they've always been different, unique styles of shoes. Just looking at some of the colorways that he has going on, man, it's just all sorts of things that like you wouldn't expect even players to even try to put in to their shoes. Like
Exactly.
he has a whole green, yellow, purple, and black colorway that he won in 2019. It's a different looking shoe.
Here, how about try this? Type in Russell Westbrook shoes Nerf.
Right, the Nerf
That's
shoes.
nice.
And look at the box of that.
I can't lie, that's pretty nice. I think it just, again, like you mentioned, right, embodies him as a brand, who Russell Westbrook is. And
It's true.
That market that he serves for Jordan. The next player we're going to talk about is, well, the next two players, I guess. We're going to talk about some newer players that signed onto the Jordan team.
He's the face of the brand. Let's be real. He's the up-and-coming face of the brand at this point.
We're talking about Luka Doncic, who signed in his rookie season in 2019.
And everyone thought he was going to go to Adidas. Let's keep that in mind. There was like a lot of people saying that.
He was very highly coveted, rightfully so, as arguably the next best player in the NBA. He currently wears the 36s. He just got his first PE in 2020. So again,
he released his first signature, I think, this year as well.
Yeah, widely expected to have his own brand, his own line. So, currently he still wears the 36s. But again, Luka Doncic, when we're talking about up and coming, that next generation of players for Jordan, Luka Doncic arguably headlines that.
Yeah, again, he is the biggest rising young star in the NBA right now. He's also giving Jordan an international flair. Sort of like, again, we talked about how Jordan brand has grown not only to other sports, but internationally they have grown so much. And even just signing a guy like Luka Doncic just adds to that.
Just to add information, the shoes are already released. They released in August, his PEs.
Yeah. His PEs just released. But yeah, man, Luka is just one of those like key signings that you want to have to have. And speaking of, obviously, key like young signings, the next player we want to bring up is Zion Williamson. Now, Zion, you love him or hate him. I think right now he needs to still reestablish himself, but there's no doubt he has a personality that can be one of the faces of the league.
That is true.
He was signed when he was a rookie in 2019 for a $70 million deal with Jordan Brand, and he has one signature shoe already, the Zion ones. And Zion Williamson, again, I think maybe not on the court, he doesn't bring a lot of value, but off the court, his personality, his joy, his sort of youthfulness, it really resonates with people, especially when he's a very highlight-driven player as well. So that definitely helps him. Well,
I think you mentioned it, right? The highlight-drivenness. There's a reason why he had the biggest rookie contract with Nike since LeBron James, basically, right? And that's for good reason. When you watch during the days that Zion Williamson was in senior year in high school, in college, coming into the NBA, who was on all the sports news channels every single day? Zion Williamson, right? Zion. And for good reason. When we're talking about the guys that can dunk over everyone, putting up that highlight reel play every single game, after LeBron James, Zion Williamson was looked at as that next LeBron James for, in terms of his market value, in terms of his brand. And every single brand was trying to get him. So for Jordan to, I think, do that and be able to get him, I think was very impressive. And obviously his career hasn't gone the way most have hoped, particularly, I think, just mainly because of his injuries.
Which was the biggest concern with him heading into the league, but also the way the Pelicans have kind of managed that, which, again, they've had a very poor history with managing injuries with players. Ask Anthony Davis. And the fact that they use the Saints, the New Orleans Saints medical staff, and not even having their own.
I forgot about that.
Yeah,
that's bad. Yeah, so again, Zion Williamson, I think, is another guy that serves as that up and comer for Nike in that next season of the franchise.
I just got one question for both of you. Will the shoes break?
Well,
I mean, that's why he's on the Jordan brand, not Nike.
Yeah, well, because the PGs are the ones that broke, right?
Exactly.
So that might be the reason why he did sign with Nike. So yeah,
I'm sure there's some reinforcement there for Zion Williamson.
Well, again, his shoe is a lot more bulky obviously for Zion Williamson. So it makes sense, right? So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I think what happens with Zion Williamson and his career and how Nike will be able to capitalize off of that because, again, like I mentioned, it hasn't. I don't think anybody can say in Nike that's gone according to plan. But again, Zion Williamson is still very, very young and can easily just shoot back up.
He's very marketable, and obviously, again, if he fixes the on-court stuff, there's no stopping what he can do. But again, Jordan Brand is really establishing himself. They have the mix of vets. They have the young stars, and again, the widespread of their popularity, not only as a lifestyle brand but as a sports apparel company, huge, and it's unprecedented.
Again, one more honorable mention, I'd like to shout out Carmelo Anthony, who also had his own signature line until 2017 when it was discontinued. Again, Carmelo Anthony's kind of reached that stage, kind of that Chris Paul stage where we were talking about before, right? So yeah, shout out Carmelo Anthony because those are some great shoes as well.
The guy who's not gonna get a ring. Oh, continue. Sorry.
Oh man!
Wow, he went there. Wow, he went there. All right, changing gear. Let's go. Let's get back on the topic here. But the next brand we want to talk about is our first international brand that we're going to be bringing up here, and that's Li-Ning. I hate that. Li-Ning, obviously, as a company, they started in 1989. Obviously, being an apparel company, started by Li-Ning himself, an Olympic athlete. And they made different apparel for different sports like badminton, table tennis, different sports, obviously. But again, basketball is very popular in China thanks to Yao Ming, Tracy McGrady, some of the other
Michael Jordan, LeBron, Kobe. Right?
Michael Jordan, LeBron. Like basketball is a huge thing in China. And so I think Li-Ning as a company, the best direction for them was to kind of move into that basketball stage. Now, obviously, the year as to when they decided to go that route is still a little unclear, but I think no doubt the biggest moment for them as a company was when they were able to partner up with Dwayne Wade in 2012, where Dwayne Wade actually left Jordan Brand to sign with Li-Ning in 2012. He now has his own brand under Li-Ning, the Way of Wade brand, and now they're signing players. Now Wade is the face of Li-Ning basketball, and it's actually quite impressive to see how Li-Ning has grown and how a lot more athletes are signing with this brand, considering it's a Chinese brand. Not many, they're not a Nike or Adidas, but they're making waves in their own right.
Well, again, when we talk about the Chinese brand, why is it so valuable and how are they able to get so many people? Well, because China's the biggest market in the world, right? Huge. So when we're talking about Nike and Adidas, those are European or North American based, and that's their markets, right? Nike obviously has made huge gains, same with Adidas in China. But having their own brand, in their own country, I think serves as a huge focal point for Li-Ning. And that's why their success as a result has grown tremendously in China. And then not even when we talk about China, outside of China, now you see like the players we're going to mention, the success of Li-Ning. I've seen people wearing Li-Nings now where I never would have seen that 5 years ago. I've seen people, on the street wearing Li-Nings. So I think that just shows, the power of, I think, 2021, 2022 branding and just like we were mentioning last episode, if you haven't watched it already, but we were mentioning how the power of the internet, right? And that's allowed companies to permeate the market as a whole, diversify the market. All these new companies are able to enter the market because of the fact that everyone can kind of control their own branding now.
Exactly.
There's avenues, there's channels for everyone. And it's not just the same 2-3 brands monopolizing the market anymore.
Yeah, and I think obviously the biggest, and I think Li-Ning, the type of athletes they actually are targeting now are kind of athletes similar to Dwayne Wade. Those hardworking, hard-nosed, like kind of different type of players. The biggest signing on the roster currently is Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler signed with them in 2020. I believe Butler also left
Jordan.
Yeah, he left Jordan Brand as well. And he signed with them in 2020. And obviously he wears the U-Shape 14 and the Speed 7. But having a guy like Jimmy Butler, he isn't the biggest, obviously off-the-court brand, off-the-court name. But on the court, what you see with him, he's a hardworking player.
Yep.
He's a player that will commit 100%.
Yep.
He is a player that's well respected.
Yep. Has his own coffee brand.
His own coffee brand.
Big Face Coffee.
Big Face
exactly.
Coffee. And again, he's notorious for the 3 a.m. workouts.
Yeah, again,
Yep.
when we talk about Jimmy Butler, he might not be the biggest personality, but in basketball circles, I think he's very well known. He has one of the bigger personalities.
He also has a
When we're
great
talking
story
about,
too.
exactly. When we're talking about like his story, his big face coffee brand, just the personality that he has, I think, is very
It's
marketable
different.
to people. And again, like when we're talking about Li-Ning, obviously they're not gonna be able to get the LeBron James, Luka Doncic's of the world, so they have to
Exactly.
go for that tier below that. And Jimmy Butler, I think, is a great start for them.
Yep. And you also said China is the biggest market as well. Yeah, look how much basketball goes on in that country, right?
They're a top 15 team in the world,
Yeah.
right? So
There's a
when
lot.
you have
of
that
basketball.
market and it's such a successful sport in the market, it can only be big things for Li-Ning and for them to go up. Again, not to mention the fact that they are a very well established brand within China, within East Asia.
Even internationally, like they like even outside of China. Like again, we're talking about how the brand is in terms of other sports, like badminton, like internationally played sports. Like they are very huge in those
That
aspects.
is true.
So now that you're adding the element of basketball to them, I think Li-Ning is really trying to target story and just good players. And the next player obviously embodies just that, and it's Fred VanVleet. He just signed with Li-Ning this past year. Obviously has been wearing the
And ones.
he was with N1 before. Now he's obviously with Li-Ning. Obviously wearing the Speed 7s. And again, Fred VanVleet, great story, great brand and moniker, the bet on yourself. Again, not a traditional, not the biggest vocal person off the court. But what do you get on the court? Hardworking, good player, leader, respected player. And again, similar to Jimmy Butler, it's the same theme as who they're trying to sign and who they're trying to bring on board, because these are building blocks to how you can get more athletes in the future. But also, when you're talking about a market in China, they look at the on-court product. They watch the games. They focus on what the athletes are wearing. So obviously, if you're getting a guy in Fred VanVleet who's a good player, works hard, people in China respect that.
Not to mention Fred VanVleet's with the only international team, right?
Yep.
That team right there. That right there. Yeah. So he's with the international team in Canada with Toronto Raptors, right? You mentioned a very organic story, a very down to earth story.
Undrafted.
Bet on yourself, right? That whole moniker, undrafted, working his way up from being undrafted, doing his time in the G League, and then working his way up into the rotation to where we had him, I think, in the 2019 finals, where he even got a finals vote from Hubie Brown, right? And he was the only guy other than Kawhi Leonard who even got a finals MVP vote, sorry. So I think he's another guy that just fits what Li-Ning is trying to do, I think.
Yeah, it's undrafted, bet on yourself, never give up on anything you want to do. His storyline is different, man. It's not like, oh, I'm gonna go this line. No, do your own things. If you can achieve that dream, do it.
I think when we're talking about finally with diversifying their brand, as we talked about with the other brands, I think this player also fits in with that aspect of having different types of players. So when talking about D'Angelo Russell, we talked about Jimmy Butler and Fred VanVleet. I think D'Angelo Russell is a different kind of player. He serves as a different type of brand athlete for Li-Ning in terms of being that flashy guy. That guy who puts up buckets in a hurry, right? Like that guy, the off-court expressiveness. And he was actually the first player that signed with the Way of Way brand. So he's played a major role in Li-Ning's growth in terms of basketball circles.
Yeah, like again, I think what we're learning is every brand needs sort of the established guys. They need the hard workers, but they also need those creative individuals. And I think that's what D'Angelo Russell kind of is. And now that you kind of have him under the Way of Wade line, that's another building block. Again, like I was just looking at the couple of colorways that he has with the Way of Wade stuff that he's got. I mean, they're pretty nice. I mean, the Warrior colorway was cool. He had an Art Basel one, Art Basel in the Edition boutique. That one looks really cool. Again, and D'Angelo Russell is a very creative individual. He obviously is a very big in the fashion game. He was a former All-Star. Can he regain that? Injuries have obviously played a factor into that, but
also he's in Minnesota.
He's in Minnesota. But yes, he's that creative piece for Li-Ning. Again, they're just continually keep building. Again, that's kind of the whole mantra of what they're trying to do.
I wouldn't be surprised if we see an ice in my veins one coming out soon.
Oh,
That would be pretty
absolutely.
sick. I think if
That would be sick.
That would
if
come
they
out.
release that would be flying.
I
off
think
the
market
shelves.
would go
They might
crazy.
have to do something different though, compared to because again Trey Young and his whole Ice Trey moniker, but they'll do something different. Obviously,
Yeah, they will.
for Li-Ning. But again, you kind of see the Li-Ning is kind of growing, especially in the basketball world. They have a target player that they're trying to go for, and more players are signing with this brand and making it bigger. And a lot of these Chinese brands because of the freedom of today's shoe game. But which brings us into the final brand we want to talk about, and I think beside Puma and some of the and Li-Ning, some of these up and coming brands we talked about, the biggest underdog type of brand is Under Armour. Under Armour was started in 1995. The brand was introduced as an apparel brand, obviously being more of a running sort of athletic wear type of brand. But then again, similar to Li-Ning, they wanted to transition over to basketball. They wanted to get a market in there. What did they do? In 2015, they went out and they signed Steph Curry, and I think they signed him away from Nike.
Yeah, so actually, when we talk about Steph Curry, first of all, when we talk about Under Armour as a whole, especially I think before the introduction of Puma back into the basketball game, when we talk about the big three of basketball, Nike, Jordan, and Adidas, the one that was actually following them was Under Armour. And then especially when we talk about Steph Curry when they signed him in 2013 and their fortunes completely changed. When we talk about Steph Curry's MVP years, Under Armour was just behind Nike. They even outsold them a couple of months.
Some of the months,
Some of the months. So when we talk about Under Armour's meteoric rise to popularity and where they've gone now, it can literally all be attributed to Steph Curry. And it's for good reason, right? Obviously, we know Nike completely botched their meeting with Steph Curry. If you guys don't know, basically Nike was talking about extending Steph Curry, and they reused Kevin Durant's presentation for Steph Curry, and they didn't even bother changing the pictures in the presentation. And as a result, obviously, Steph Curry signed with Under Armour, and Under Armour struck gold, right? When we're talking about the MVP, the greatest shooter of all time, in my books, definitely a top 5 point guard in history. Just when we talk about the NBA today, I think arguably the biggest factor of the NBA today is Steph Curry and what he's done for the game.
He's one of the faces of today's game, especially the way, he changed the way the game is played today. Like there's not a lot of players who can say that they did that. And the fact of the matter is that defenses are different because of Steph Curry. Teams' offense is completely different because of Steph Curry. And again, Under Armour really picked him up at the perfect time, right before his peak. But then they got all the benefits off his MVPs, the championships, the finals runs, the 73-9 season. Like they got everything, all the good out of Steph Curry. And again, another element of Steph Curry is the affordability of his shoes. His shoes were always very affordable.
Yeah, they are.
And Under Armour low-key makes some good stuff. Like they made some really good shoes. Mm-hmm. I love their apparel line as well in terms of like practicality, how they, how you can use them every single day. But the Curry line is just so synonymous now, and now obviously being its own brand for Under Armour, the colorways were also very, very nice as well.
Well, when we talk about the Curry brand, he already has 8 shoes in the Curry line. And then when we're talking about affordability on top of affordability, right? He also has his own cheaper line of Curry shoes in addition to the Curry line that he already has, right? So when we're talking about, I think Steph Curry, he's reached that level of, I think, in terms of value-wise, what, for example, a guy like LeBron James represents to Nike, Steph Curry is exactly that for Under Armour.
Well, I was even going to take it a step further. He's Under Armour's Jordan.
Basically,
he's their gem that like they built the brand around, and they're only growing. They're growing as a brand. They're now an established player. Speaking of which, the next player we want to talk about on Under Armour that signed with Under Armour was Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid signed with Under Armour in 2018. He has now one signature shoe, and he's the second player, obviously besides Steph Curry, to get his own shoe with Under Armour. And the thing with Embiid is that he has all the off-court personality that Steph Curry doesn't have. From his social media presence to his process nickname,
to his crybaby face in Game 7.
Hey, listen, he can make money off that. But the reality is he's a rare big man to not only have a signature shoe, but also he has that Shaq-like personality, I'll say.
He does.
And he dominates on the court. Let's be real. If we weren't, barring injury, he's probably the best big man in basketball.
Yeah, no,
Like
definitely.
in terms of what he can do, both ends of the court, he's what you want. Now,
I'll give you
obviously,
that.
injuries have definitely derailed that, but again, the fact
Yeah.
that Under Armour has him, and again, a lot of the reason why they even were able to pick him up was because of Steph Curry, and I think that's a great pickup. Big men are very underrated, in terms of the value they can bring the brands, and I think Embiid can change that definitely.
When was the last big man had a shoe? What, Shaq since
Shaq.
I was
Reebok?
gonna say Shaq.
But he
Right?
did his own thing.
But he did his own thing, right? He went to what?
Hakeem
Walmart and
Olajuwon.
Hakeem Olajuwon.
Yeah,
That's
maybe
another
Hakeem.
one.
Again, Hakeem also did the same thing of, what
I
he
think
also did
that's-
the same thing as
that's it.
Shaq as like, why do I want my shoes to be so expensive for kids, right? And you can't do anything but respect that. But I
Yeah.
think in terms of Under Armour as a whole, like you mentioned, with basically Steph Curry, they are an established player now in the market, and that allowed them to go out and sign a guy like Joel Embiid, who, despite being a big man, is works very well in today's NBA with his social media presence, for example.
Yep.
Just the meme worthiness of a guy like Joel Embiid, right, works very well for Under Armour.
Bro,
so
we
I
talked
think-
about when Andre Drummond signed with the Sixers.
Yeah, exactly.
We were
Yeah.
just like, yo,
and it was all over. It was all over social media, right? So I think Under Armour.
their first encounter. That was
Under
Yep.
Armour has done very well for themselves, and I think again with Steph Curry being that face of the brand now, that's only gonna allow them to use that capital that they acquired to go and sign more players and to grow that brand
Yeah.
even further.
Yeah, long as moral of the story, they're a player now, and they work their way to get where they need to get. Just before we move on, obviously with the up and under segment, out of these four brands, which one relates to you the most?
I mean, I think it's probably gonna be obvious, but I would say, Nike's just Nike, bro. They're the player in the market. They are. Not to mention when we talk about, even if you want to say Jordan, Jordan is part of Nike.
That is true.
Again, Nike is, maybe there will be a day where somebody dethrones them, but I can't see it anytime soon. Especially when we talk about the fact that Jordan's probably the biggest lifestyle sneaker there is.
That is
And
true.
the fact that they also are part of Nike means that Nike is not going anywhere anytime soon.
So if you were an athlete, you'd go the Nike route if you had these four brands.
Well, again, they have the most money, so
Alright.
if they're giving me, if I was an athlete, I just go with whoever gives me the most money. And again, athletes now are very lucky, I think, because they have a lot of options. When we talked about last episode with Puma, Converse trying to make the return.
Exactly. Yep.
Under Armour now. A lot of these guys, it's one of the biggest reasons why you saw that decline in market share for Nike, just because the competition is there now. Everyone can get a slice of the pie, in a sense. So I think it's only a good thing. Competition breeds, excellence, and I think that's true in the shoe market as well.
One I will add to yours is that if a brand was coming up to me to give me, yes, I'll agree with the more money thing, but I want my own creativity. I want my own, how I want to design it, how what colors I want to put, what I want to put on the shoe, how I want to design the box and all that. But if I had to pick between these brands, it's either Nike or Under Armour, to be honest. Nike, yes, because biggest brand in the world and everything. But Under Armour, when it comes down to shoe-wise, Stephen Curry's 4s were the best. And I wore them for maybe 1 season, 2 seasons.
His shoes were very good.
Yeah.
he has some good shoes.
Especially the 4s when they hit the ankle, it's there. Your ankle
Yeah.
is there. You can't move, and it's perfect.
Well,
But
one of the reasons I think also why people want to end up signing with Nike is just because the availability of products that they have.
Exactly,
Right?
yeah.
If you're with Nike, you're gonna be able to wear all the Nike shoes that
Every
they have,
Nike shoe.
all the Jordan shoes that they have. Which other brand has the amount of products that Nike has? Nobody else has the amount of products that Nike has, and that's probably a big factor in why players sign with Nike.
you're gonna get shoes that Nike you didn't even know they had. That's the thing.
Pretty much.
That's what you're gonna get.
I mean, for me personally, I'm gonna kind of go a little different. I'll say for me, I'll go between Jordan or Under Armour. I really think. I mean, I like the iconic version of Jordan. At least me being a traditionalist and being someone that respects Jordan not only as a player but the story that comes with that. So having that Jumpman logo, but I think Under Armour in terms of a product, I value making a good product, and Under Armour makes some good stuff.
They do.
So
I agree.
one of those, again, even Li-Ning is something that speaks to me as well. So yeah, those were 4 brands that we feel are some of the biggest brands out there in the basketball landscape. Let us know what you guys think. Agree or disagree? Let us know in the comment section on YouTube or social media. Which brings us finally into the Up and Under segment for this week. A few things we got to go over. Some controversial, as always, and some not. First and foremost, one of our heavy hitters on the show.
I think he's everyone's heavy hitter.
He's everyone's heavy hitter. Let's be real. Are you up or under on the Kyrie Irving situation? Yes, we have to call it the Kyrie Irving situation. Just to give it some context. So, he was permitted by the New York State to obviously attend practice because it was technically a private office, though I heavily disagree with that ruling because what the hell?
Again, in all honesty, if you've noticed anything with this pandemic,
it's a money-making point.
Everyone makes up their own, the government makes up their own rules.
Pretty
much.
Money.
It's all based on money.
But the Brooklyn Nets have just announced that Kyrie Irving will not play or practice with the Nets until he is fully eligible to do so, which basically entails he's not going to play or practice with the team until he's fully vaccinated. So are you up or under on the Kyrie Irving situation?
Well, I mean, I'm under on it, but I think either he's fully vaccinated, which won't happen, clearly, or, obviously New York lifts those restrictions, which won't happen anytime soon.
No.
Right? So, I'm under on it, obviously. Like, again, Kyrie's going to do what he's going to do. That's his choice, right? But obviously, I think for everyone else involved, as well as for Kyrie, it's definitely disappointing for everyone just because of the fact that, the Nets, for example, are not a big three anymore. They're a big two. Now they're vulnerable, I think, for the rest of the league. Everyone looks at them as, hey, we can definitely beat them now. They're not as, they're not as invincible as they once were.
KD's crying.
So...
He built this impossible situation.
And again, like
only for Kyrie to ruin it.
Exactly. Like you just said, right? KD joined the Nets because of Kyrie Irving primarily. And now that's not exactly working out as well.
Let's be real. He should have just stayed in Golden State.
And then again, for Kyrie, like he said that he wants to play as well, but he's not going to take the vaccine to do that. So again, I think it's just an unfortunate situation all around.
Kyrie's a fool. Let me just lay it right down there. He is a complete fool.
Fool? It's more like a big baby.
Sure, you can also call him an idiot too. Whatever you want to say. He started his Instagram live, which again he didn't Instagram live to try to explain his side of the story, and he basically portrayed himself as, "Oh, I'm doing this for you, for people who do want to have a voice, have a choice." But buddy, you don't get a choice. You work for an organization where 95% of your colleagues,
I think it's around like 97 now.
It is a very high percentage of the NBA is fully vaccinated, and you are not. Why? You have a golden chance to win a championship, which is the number one element of your job. It's the number one achievement in your role, in your job. You're choosing to turn your back on that. Turn your back on guys that literally came to the city for you, but you decided, no, I'm not gonna do it because I don't want to take a shot. Like, it's pure selfishness. And also, he also brought up the fact that, it's I don't want to. I wouldn't want to give up I don't want to give up this money and all this stuff. So don't. You're giving up this money on purpose because obviously they can fine you for missing games, all that stuff. And again, the Nets also didn't extend a contract extension to him, which I 100% agree with. You can't give a guy a contract extension if he's not reliable. So I don't know if you have anything to add to that, but
what is there to add?
Well, no, I don't even think it's just, again, for the Nets' perspective, it's not just the vaccine situation. It's the culmination, right?
Yeah.
When we talked about last year, he played 7 games over, 2-week span, and then took a break, right? Without telling anybody, by the way.
Pretty much.
Right? Without telling his coaches, his players, whatever.
And he just said he needed a break.
He needed a break. Okay, sure.
Tell somebody.
Okay, everyone needs a break. Cool. Nobody's saying his break wasn't validated. But you can't just dip. You can't just dip, right? You can't just take a break without telling anybody, right? So again, stuff like that, his all off-court stuff, it's just a culmination of everything.
Listen,
at this point.
I swear, I was talking to him about this in the car about some coworkers we've had in the past. There's people who are in a job but don't realize it's a job. Exactly. You have responsibilities that come with that, and I think Kyrie Irving doesn't really see that.
Okay, let me ask you this: when I'm pushing it to LeBron's side, but when LeBron does something, he influences other players, right?
For sure.
So why doesn't Kevin Durant and James Harden influence? Get your vaccine. Come help us win a ring.
Because they can't change his mind. I feel like they did tell him to do that.
I don't think so.
I feel like Kevin Durant is like,
well,
yo,
think about it this
I want
way.
a chip.
Think about it this way. LeBron couldn't do it for Kyrie, right? When we talk about the Cleveland days,
Yeah, but
Kyrie dipped.
Yeah,
from
Kyrie
Cleveland
dipped,
because of
but then
LeBron.
that one season he's like, "Oh, I want to be with LeBron, yo. I miss LeBron. I want
Again,
LeBron."
so that's kind
Come
of
on, man.
that's kind of
Please.
where Kyrie Irving is.
He's
at
the
this
biggest
point.
baby in the league right now.
Pretty
Yeah,
much.
next up, are you up or under on the 76ers, Ben Simmons?
Oh my
Now
God.
he will reportedly play for the team, so he's already checked
Oh,
in. He's already done all of
God.
his tests, his physicals or whatnot. He's apparently not going to play for their final preseason game, but he's going to be available for the regular season. And, put this into perspective, this was basically what happened after he missed one check. And he was like, he saw how many zeros was on that check. He was like, yeah, I think I'm going to come back. So are you up or under on the Ben Simmons situation?
Under. Go away. You don't want to play for the team. Go away. Don't play for the team. No, you can't take one stance. It's basically like Andrew Wiggins with the vaccine. They're like, as soon as the NBA is like, oh, you're not gonna play any, or like the cities are like, oh, you're not playing any home games. He's like, oh man, like, do I really gotta lose this money now too? Fine, I'll do it. It's basically that. So Ben Simmons is like, oh, I want out of Philly. Oh, you guys don't respect me. Oh, this blah 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 blah. Oh, I'm losing money. Okay, you know what? I'll play for you. I'll play for a little bit. I'm like,
And again, this is
You're
just
not all
another.
in.
This is just another situation of what's Rich Paul thinking, right?
not.
What are they thinking? You're tank. We've talked about this numerous times. I'm not gonna go into it again, but basically, man's trading is tanking his trade value, right? It's pretty simple.
I mean, it's already tanked.
And so, what was the point of doing this now that you're coming back? And again, it's created an awkward situation for the whole team now, where even if they don't have anything against you personally, that relationship is never going to be fixed
fractured.
again. It's done. That's it. You're never going to be able to fix that relationship. And especially, again, when we know that he has 1 foot out the door. We saw what happened with the James Harden situation, and James Harden played. He at least played. He showed up to every practice,
Yeah.
even though he was late for some of them. But he showed up for every
And
practice.
out of shape, but
Kind of out of shape a little bit. But he showed up for every practice. He still tried mentoring the young guys. He still was with the team everywhere. Ben Simmons did not even any of that. What?
the only part of like James Harden situation I didn't like was the fact that he only picked the team that he wanted to go to. I didn't really like that because he basically handcuffed the team. But yeah, I agree. He did handle it a lot better in terms of he showed up, he did what he had to do, and a trade was facilitated. It wasn't the mess that this situation.
And
was.
again, Houston came out of it pretty well,
Yeah.
right? And that's because James Harden at least didn't completely tank his trade value, right? So unlike Ben Simmons, who's completely just botched the whole situation himself and botched the situation for everyone else.
Is this Ben Simmons situation like his ex-girlfriends and stuff? Date one, lose some money, and then date another one, lose some money,
But
and then date another one, and lose some money.
That's
Is
a
it like-
whole other
No.
losing
What
streak.
do you mean other?
That's a whole other losing streak for
Yeah,
Ben
that's-
Simmons.
again-
Isn't it like that?
I think it's a culmination of everything, right? Like when we talked
Come
about
on,
previously, when we talked about he listed a number of teams that he wanted to go to, and he said, I don't want to go to any of these other teams because I think the word they used was, I'm a young socialite. And I need to be in social cities."
Socialite?
You a young idiot. That's what you are.
AKA
No,
Houston,
it's-
AKA LA. Basically.
It's more like the team was asking for too much. You crazy?
Well, both sides were both doing.
Stupid things.
Pretty
Exactly.
much.
Well, again,
Yeah.
the team could never get a trade done either because Ben
There-
Simmons had tanked his trade value to the point where you couldn't even get a decent trade anymore.
Pretty
What-
much.
what was
So
it?
Daryl Morey was asking for a lot too. Part of the reason why Daryl Morey is asking for so much is because he's not getting anything anyways.
He's not. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
And what
So-
was it? They wanted from the Raptors. They wanted what? Our whole roster and like
Fred
3 picks.
VanVleet, OG Anunoby. I think they also wanted Pascal. And
Yeah,
two
and
first?
no 3 or 2, 3. Crazy. It's
basically
not
they
worth
want
that
a
much.
lot, right? And
So
that's-
basically, they're telling us to trade for a guy who doesn't shoot.
Pretty much.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
that's not happening.
It's you can hear more about the Ben Simmons situation in previous episodes. We've spent a lot on Ben Simmons.
Yeah,
and
we did.
It's a never
Like how he spent a lot on his ex-girlfriends. Next.
pretty much. Moving on, are you up or under on the Orlando Magic signing Wendell Carter Jr. to a 4-year, $50 million extension? This actually just broke today.
I'm up on it. He showed a lot of promise in his Chicago days. Obviously, that last season in Chicago, or that last half season, whatever it was in Chicago, was not that great. But when he
About the
got
money.
to Orlando, I think he kind of found his footing once again. he knew that he'd be given that opportunity again. And Wendell Carter Jr.'s kind of looked pretty well. You know, he's kind of. I've always looked at him as like another Al Horford kind of player, but without the offensive skills that Al Horford has. I think defensively and height-wise, I think build-wise, they're kind of the same. So I see a lot of similarities in that aspect. Again, the Magic suck, and they kind of have to
Dude,
do
the
this.
money is crazy. Like, that's a very affordable contract. Like, what, like $9 million a season?
Basically, for a guy that a lot of teams would covet.
Yeah, it's a steal. It's a steal of a contract. What about you, Maytham? What do you think?
He's a good player. He's improved. He's shown what he's done. Right. He deserves that money, and let's see if he can get more.
Yeah. Sure. Next up, are you up or under on the Clippers also signing another young player? They signed Terrence Mann to a 2-year, $22 million extension. So are you up or under on this?
I'm sorry, man. I'm under, man. If one game gives you one game in the playoffs,
one game, bro. This guy was sick for the whole season.
No, man.
Nah,
not
bro,
22.
Okay,
22
clearly
million
you
dollars.
haven't watched enough Terrence Mann.
I've watched enough to know
No.
that like he's
a very, very good player
okay.
on an affordable deal.
I can say it's affordable, but again, the Clippers have no money anyway, so I don't know where they're paying these guys.
I mean, they have a. There was something I forget. There was
They could have got. I feel like they could have gotten someone better for $11 million a season.
Yeah, but it's a contract extension off his rookie deal.
Sure, fine. I'm not mad at the amount, but I'm just like, you know, it's not the biggest news in my opinion. I mean, it's a 2-year deal, so it's definitely smart business on their end, less risk.
I mean, again, like think about it this way, right? He was picked by the GMs to have the biggest breakout season. He's been a very good player for them since basically day one, especially defensively, and then last year when he showed the offensive flashes that he's had. And he was probably a top 4 player for them in the playoffs.
I mean, there weren't a lot of players in the playoffs
What
until
teams he played for? The Clippers.
So
Yeah, he was the top 4.
He was a top 4. I would say a top 4 player for them.
Yeah.
So you know, I think the signing, I would say I'm hella up on it.
I'm up.
For
I'm definitely up on
the
that.
Los Angeles Clippers.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, it is what it is. We'll see what happens. See what he does with it, obviously. But yeah, I do like the fact that it's a 2-year deal. Finally, are you up or under on 18 former NBA players have been charged $4 million in healthcare fraud?
So they were charged in a $4 million healthcare
Pretty
fraud.
much.
And some of the big names I would say are some of the biggest names are guys like Tony Allen, Glenn Davis, Darius Miles, Allen Anderson, Tony Rowan, Shannon Brown, Sebastian Telfair. There's a number of other players.
There's a lot of former Raptors.
Jamario Moon. Oh my
Jamario
God.
Moon, yeah, there's a number.
Shout out Sebastian Telfair.
Yeah, there's a number of players. So I think, for me, I would say I'm under on the situation. I think everyone's just on. It's like, bro, what are you doing, man?
It's a very 2000s thing to do.
And
It's all 2000s.
Pretty
And
much.
again, the biggest one, I think, you look at the list of names, you're like, all right, I can kind of see it. The one name that you're like, why is this guy here? Is Tony Allen.
Pretty much.
Why is Tony Allen in this list? I think that's, again, when you look, everyone else said the same thing. All these other guys, you can see it, right?
Glenn
You can
Glenn
see
Davis.
Glenn Davis, you know, Darius, like these guys have their issues. Tony Allen is like, bro, what? And this guy's having his jersey retired too. This guy's about to have his jersey retired. That's what makes this even worse, right? So now that jersey retirement ceremony is going to be very awkward because it's going to be like, hey, you also cheated like the player fund. You contributed to that $4 million loss. And apparently this was a very big situation because there was kickbacks involved for agents who, facilitated these things. One of the crazy stories I was reading was the fact that Greg Smith, while he was playing in Europe, claimed that he had dental care. While he's playing in Europe, he had dental care in the United States. So, again, realistically, who was doing this?
Fly in for a dentist appointment.
Again, how that doesn't make any sense, right? So, I think, again, this whole situation is just bad overall, and especially, I think, when you think about it from all the players that fought for healthcare for the players, Spencer Haywood in particular talked about how disappointed he was because of the fact that when they were going through the league, guys like Spencer Haywood had to fight for the right to healthcare. They did a lot for the right to healthcare. And for these players to try to cheat that out of, the healthcare fund and what, how much it represents 2 players. And again, a lot of these guys are bigger players.
They're bigger names as
If
well.
you look at 90% of the players, 90% of the players didn't make the millions that guys like Glenn Davis made, the millions that Darius Miles, Shannon Brown, Sebastian Telfair made.
Even Tony Allen.
Exactly. A lot of those guys 90% of players never got that amount of money. So for them, that healthcare fund is very important for them.
Exactly.
And to see guys who made their money just do stuff like this is disappointing.
Definitely disappointing. Yeah, man, we'll see what happens. Obviously, this case is gonna go into trial, and all that messy legal stuff is gonna transpire for that. But we'll see what happens with this situation. But it's just kind of disappointing.
I'll just add one more thing. It says that this is from SI. I'm just gonna quote from that Terrence Williams is the one who orchestrated this scheme.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty. Again, Terrence Williams was another guy that was still in the league for a decent chunk of time.
Yeah.
He made an okay amount of money. Not okay. He made a lot of money compared to a regular guy, but he made an okay amount of money in terms of NBA standards. He still played in the 2010s, right? So he was still making a decent amount of money. But again, this is just another instance of guys who I think just thinking about themselves basically, right?
And then it also goes to say that those fraudulent claims total to 3.9 million. Off that, the defense received 2.5 million proceeds.
Yeah. It's a messy situation now, man. It's just a sad one. But with that concludes this week's episode. We hope you guys enjoyed it. Definitely subscribe to the show on all the various platforms. You can find us on Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher Radio, YouTube. Basically, wherever you can find a podcast, you can find us with the Up and Under Podcast. Also, follow us on social media, Twitter and Instagram at up_and_under_podcast, Facebook.com/up_and_under_podcast for all the latest updates whenever we post a new episode or a reaction to news like the Kyrie Irving situation and the Ben Simmons situation as they occur. So definitely check that out if you haven't done so. Also, check out our website, upandunderpodcast.com. It's our central hub for the show. It's a place where we write blog posts with every single episode. So if you don't have time to listen or watch the full thing, you can read about it on our website. Definitely check that out if you haven't done so. And yeah, man. I think by the time this episode goes out, we'll be basically right at the regular season, which is very, very exciting. Spoiler alert: we already got our tickets to see greatness back in Toronto. So very excited about that. So cannot wait for that, man. The season's starting, man. It's gonna be a fun season. Hopefully, some normalcy this season.
Fingers crossed.
Pretty much, man. But yeah, big shout out Maytham. Thank you so much for doing these past couple of episodes.
No problem.
We'll do our best to have you get on more often.
Let me know.
But yeah, with that concludes this week's episode. We'll see you guys all in the next one. Take it easy.
Easy.